All right, ready to dive into some seriously fascinating stuff today? We're talking Anunnaki, fallen angels, even that whole serpent seed theory. Talk about a rabbit hole of ancient myths and biblical interpretation, right? All tied to this question of, well, how did humanity even get here?
And the thing is, right, these aren't just some dusty old myths like forgotten on a library shelf somewhere. They're blowing up online. People are captivated, debating. It's wild.
No, for real. YouTube, especially. You go down that rabbit hole and it's like, bam. Elaborate fan videos, Anunnaki history reimagined, experts popping up left and right. It's all that mystery.
And you're not alone, trust me. Remember that video you sent? Two guys going at it, debating the Anunnaki's whole role in, like, creating humanity. These weren't exactly, fringe folks. Successful, engaged, and here they are, passionately arguing about these ancient beings. Tells you something about how much these stories still resonate.
Absolutely. And I get it, okay? There's this undeniable allure to it all. Ancient civilizations with advanced technology. Creation stories that flip the script on everything we thought we knew. It's like, I don't know, peeking behind the curtain of reality or something.
Totally. But as we're peaking, right, important to ground ourselves a bit. Definitions are key. Myths, while captivating, they often reflect, more than anything, cultural beliefs, anxieties even, not necessarily historical fact. It was humanity's way of grappling with the unknown, expressing those fears, finding meaning in a world they didn't quite get.
So when we say Anunnaki, where do we even start? Who are they?
So Sumerian mythology, ancient Mesopotamia, that's the origin point. Anunnaki were deities, a whole pantheon of gods, and they were woven into these creation myths. You'll hear names like Enlil, god of air and storms, or Enki, connected to water and wisdom. They're the big players.
Okay, so already we've got history, mythology, and a whole lot of interpretations swirling together, which honestly is where it gets exciting, right? And that before we even touch on how some folks connect these Sumerian tales to, you guessed it, biblical accounts.
Right.
And speaking of which, you highlighted Genesis chapter 6 specifically, sons of God, Nephilim, those two phrases, guaranteed to spark some debate. What's your take?
Well, you're not wrong about the debate part. Even in, traditional biblical scholarship, interpretations of those terms are all over the place. There's no one universally agreed upon answer.
Seriously, it's like everyone's got their own version of the story. So hit us with it, lay it on us. What are some of the most common interpretations? Who were these sons of God? We gotta know.
Well, one of the most common, especially among, literal readers of the Bible, they'll say the sons of God. Those were angelic beings, straight up.
Right, right. And they've got some arguments, I gotta admit. Didn't you find sources pointing to other parts of the Old Testament where that phrase, sons of God, it pops up?
Yeah, absolutely. The Enduring Word Bible commentary, they make a big deal about how it shows up in Job. Job 1.6, Job 2.1, even Job 38.7. And each time, pretty clearly referring to angels.
So consistency-wise, within the text itself, that's a point for the angel interpretation. Can't argue with that. But what about the other ones? You mentioned some. What's the logic there?
So another big one is it's called the Sethite interpretation. Bit of a mouthful, this one.
Oh, we're ready. Hit us with it. We love a good deep dive. What's the Sethite view all about?
Basically, it argues that the sons of God, Genesis chapter 6, they weren't angels. Nope, human descendants of Seth.
Seth, right. Third son, Adam and Eve, after the whole Cain and Abel situation. First family drama for the win. Okay, so Seth's descendants, but how does that explain the sons of God part?
So those who like this view, they see sons of God as representing this lineage, righteous dudes descended from Seth, and they intermarried with the daughters of men, who they say are probably a less, shall we say, godly lineage, maybe from Cain.
Gotcha, gotcha. So it's like good versus evil, righteous versus wicked, playing out through these family lines, huh? Pretty intense. But hold on, where do the Nephilim fit in then? With this Sethite family tree thing, they're kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, that's where it gets even trickier. Some folks, they'll say the Nephilim, not literal giants, not hybrids or anything, just men of renown, powerful, maybe tyrants even, who came from this whole lineage mixing.
Whoa, okay. So Nephilim could be anything from angel-human hybrids to just like really influential figures. Depends who you ask.
Exactly. And that's why, you need that critical eye,
Yeah.
looking at the big picture, the context, not getting too hung up on super literal readings.
Oh, totally, totally. It's easy to get caught up, for
Yeah.
sure. Stepping back is key.
For sure. And this is where I think those YouTube videos, those online communities, it's fascinating. People taking these ancient narratives and reimagining them, and they get so specific, so dramatic.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like they're writing the next big blockbuster, but set in ancient Sumeria or something. Remember that 6-hour Anunnaki epic you mentioned?
Yeah.
The dedication? I was blown away. Though, gotta admit, some of the details, right? Like that dark brown cloud bringing the doom. And then there's this whole bit, a character, well, let's just say they had some digestive issues at a very specific altitude, and it was treated like this huge plot point.
It's amazing, isn't it, how they add all these details so specific to these old myths.
It really is. And it got me thinking, why? Why do these stories, even the really out there ones, they still grab us like that? What is it about these narratives that just sticks with us, even after thousands of years?
It's a good question. And I think, honestly, it's about something fundamental to humans.
Yeah.
We want to understand where we fit in the grand scheme of things. Myths, throughout history, they've been a way to deal with those big questions, even if they weren't always, like, factually accurate.
Totally. Like, where did we come from? Why are we here? Good versus evil, right? Those questions never get old. And the Anunnaki, Nephilim, fallen angels, they're all part of that, this search for meaning.
Exactly. A lens to explore those huge questions, to
Mm.
wrestle with creation, purpose, trying to make sense of it all, There's a vast, sometimes chaotic cosmos.
So on one hand, you've got these ancient cultures, right, dealing with the unknown through these myths. And on the other, you've got us doing the same thing, but with YouTube videos and online forums. Kind of wild when you think about it.
Absolutely. It shows how deep those needs run. Meaning, connection, answers. These narratives, old or new, they tap into that human longing.
Speaking of longing, there's this one theme kept popping up in the research you sent over, serpent seed, often tangled up with the Anunnaki stuff. But also, it seemed to have its own thing going on, especially in some corners of the internet. What are your thoughts on that whole concept?
Okay, so that one we got to tread carefully. The serpent seed theory. Intriguing as it might seem to some, it's one of those things where caution and critical thinking are like absolutely essential. It often comes from twisting biblical text, and unfortunately, it's been used to back up some really harmful ideologies.
It's like trying to find that sweet spot, right? Where you can be captivated by these ancient mysteries, these big stories, but also not be naive about how they're presented, how they can even be misused. Tricky balance.
For sure. And it speaks to this even bigger challenge, right? This age we're in, information overload. How do you even tell what's true, what's BS, especially with these narratives that have been, let's be honest, reinterpreted, spun, sensationalized for centuries?
Like that game, Telephone, remember? You whisper something down the line. By the time it gets to the end, totally different message.
Exactly. And we're talking about ancient texts, translations on top of translations, interpretations passed down through generations. So much room for stuff to get lost or, deliberately twisted.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So where do we even go from here? How do we engage with these ancient stories, the Bible, mythology, all of it in a way that's, I don't know, meaningful but also responsible?
I think it starts with, honestly, a bit of humility, admitting that none of us have all the answers
Mhm.
and that our own backgrounds, our biases, they're always going to color how we see things.
So being open to different perspectives, challenging our own assumptions even, and being willing to change our minds when new information comes up.
100%. And being choosy about our sources. Look for those voices that prioritize accuracy, analysis, not just trying to sell you something, Sensationalism, agendas, that's a red flag. Remember, extraordinary claims. They need extraordinary evidence.
Right. If someone's saying they've got the Anunnaki on speed dial or they found the secret decoder ring for the Bible, I'm going to need some pretty convincing proof.
Exactly. And that proof, it's got to hold up when you actually look at it, not fall apart the minute you apply some critical thinking.
Well, this has been quite the deep dive, hasn't it? Ancient Sumerian myths to modern-day YouTube interpretations. We've explored different takes on those biblical passages, even dipped our toes into how these narratives can be, well, misused. It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But I think at the core, right, these stories, no matter how we interpret them, they remind us that these big questions, they're powerful. Our need to find meaning, to understand the universe, that's a constant. It's human.
So as we wrap things up here, listeners, we leave you with this. How will you navigate these complex, sometimes contradictory narratives about our past, our place in it all? Curiosity, skepticism, maybe a bit of both. That's for you to decide as you continue your own exploration.
And hey, who knows? Maybe in searching for answers, you'll stumble on even more intriguing questions. That's the beauty of it all.